if you decide you want to shadow a news anchor at a news network, how do you get access to that person, and how do you convince them to allow you to spend a day in the station there? I'm thinking of one of our most famous shadowing episodes. A woman named Sue Simmons. I'm going back about 15 years now, maybe 17 or 18. Was the hottest news anchor in New York City. She'd come from Atlanta, I believe, and she started out at $5 or $6 million a year, and everybody was dazzled by Sue Simmons there. And one girl came to me and said she wanted to shadow Sue Simmons. I said, boy, there's a tough one, because if you write the network, Sue Simmons will never see the letter. You get a form letter back saying, we'd love to help you, but it's impossible given the blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, I said, if you can penetrate her personal security, if you can find out where she lives and make a personal appeal and offer her a quid pro quo, something for something, I said, you have a chance that she just might do this for you. Now, you can tell, I think, from my manner that, in fact, she succeeded, but not the intermediary steps, which took 3 months of hounding that poor woman and baking brownies for her and leaving notes at her building every other day, until finally Sue must have thought the easiest way to defend myself against this girl is simply to do it. And when it happened, I said to the girl, now you've got to make good on the quid pro quo. I told the girl if she took a still camera and she took slides of the newsroom and a day with Sue Simmons in the newsroom, and then she made a tape recording text that would coordinate with the slides. The duplicating slides is very cheap. In those days, it was, I think, $0.10 a slide. So if it took a 36 image roll of 35 millimeter film for $3.50, we could get a dupe set of the slides, and then a cassette tape was $1, and you could donate a day with Sue Simmons to every school in the school district. There were 20 of them, so your total expenditure on that thing is about $100. And what you've done is give each of the schools in the district the chance to have a day with Sue Simmons to see the inside workings of the NBC newsroom. And you could also write a couple of pages on how you got access to this opportunity. Sue Simmons' name would be bandied about the Upper West Side of Manhattan, which is the media bedroom for the television industry. She could only come out of it smelling like roses if she had helped a 13-year-old public school kid. I have no doubt that some newspaper or other would have done a little feature article on it. So there'd have been a real quid pro quo here. And indeed, all those things happen. But it gives your life a kind of a treasure hunt aspect. It's amazingly exhilarating. You're constantly looking at the world you live in and saying, how could I create a way for a kid to penetrate that reality and produce a worthwhile project that would have interest beyond his or her own life and might really resonate down the years? So that's one of the things I did. Field curriculum, I called that. I realized that the lack of responsibility in these kids' lives was leading to a lot of the pathologies that I saw. Not to be useful is to be useless. That's not just a play on words. It's true. You either have a function or you don't. You have a function that's real, or you have a phony function, copying notes off a blackboard, or pretending that embedding yourself in this institution for 12 years is the only and best way you can develop your mind. That's nonsense, and we all know that. So I looked for ways to bring this about. The next thing and the way I discovered was apprenticeships. I rediscovered the wheel, what had been the staple of Western education, and probably Eastern too, for that matter, for millennia, apprenticing yourself to somebody who knows how to do something. Now, certainly I didn't have the power or the inclination to assign a kid for a year, but to assign a kid 1 day a week for a year, which adds up to 40 days out of the school year, or 8 school weeks, I thought was a fair exchange. And for those kids who were too emotionally inadequate to do that, I conceived of the 1, 2, or 3 day apprenticeship, where someone would take the kid in and let the kid see what the nature of that, whatever that business or specialty was, and explain to the kid how decisions were made in exchange for some service. I would tell the kids, if you just take and go away, you're not only a nasty human being there, this really won't stick with you. You always have to come to somebody with a quid pro quo in mind and say, if you'll do this for me, I'll do this for you. And of course, kids will always say to you, kids can't do anything. But in fact, there are many things they can do, among which I'd say the principal value is just to ask penetrating questions of an older person. Because all of us like to lay our lives out in the air so that other people can live schematically what we went through. Everyone loves to do that. It defines us. The next thing I did, but only for a few kids, maybe 5 a year, because it's much more difficult than an apprenticeship. You'll find that getting a short-term apprenticeship is very, very easy to do, much easier than you imagine. But getting a mentorship where there's like a family exchange, like someone steps in as a godfather or something, and for regular times each week, there's an intense personal relationship. These are much, much harder because the person committing to them will be aware that this isn't just something I can do with my left hand. Like to get an apprenticeship with an auto mechanic, basically it's just to let the kid lean over the hood and see all these wonderful things being manipulated, and then the guy says, and this is this, and then you go on. But to open yourself the way a mentorship but it's worth trying, because those are transformational experiences